I was still buckling my seatbelt when my son's name lit up on my phone. For a second, I smiled like muscle memory. It was rare these days, but I thought maybe he was calling to check in. Maybe he was at the gate waiting to pick me up. I had barely tapped the screen when I saw it. No greeting. No hi, Mum. Just one message. Actually, it'll just be her family. Hope you understand. I read it again. And again. The plane hadn't even taxied to the gate yet, and already I felt like I'd been pushed off mid-air. Around me, people were stretching, grabbing bags, chatting about rental cars and hotel check-ins. But I just sat there, phone clenched in my hand, like it might explain itself if I stared hard enough. It didn't. I felt the burn behind my eyes, the kind that comes before tears, but I didn't let them fall. Not there. Not in 23B with a stranger on my left, asking if the Wi-Fi worked. I'd flown across the country for Evan's wedding, paid for the flight myself, booked the hotel. I didn't ask for help, I never do. I brought the quilt. That damn quilt. 3 generations of women in my family had added to it every wedding, every baby, every loss. Tiny squares of memory stitched together with love and calloused fingers. My mother started it the year she got married. I added my piece when Evan was born. I'd been saving a spot for his bride. I didn't tell anyone I was bringing it. I wanted it to be a surprise. Something old, something meaningful. The kind of gift that doesn't come from a registry. I'd wrapped it in tissue paper, tied it with ribbon, packed it in a hard case like it was glass. Because to me, it was. But apparently none of that mattered. At the terminal, I moved like someone underwater. I took the escalator down, found the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, and just stood there. Not crying. Not breathing right either. Just standing. I looked at my reflection in the mirror and saw someone who didn't know where she was supposed to go anymore. My hotel was 8 miles from the venue. A modest chain. Not fancy, but clean. I picked it because it had good reviews and a garden view. Not that I'd get to see the garden now. I slid into the back of a lift and gave the driver the address. He was young, maybe Harper's age. Played some indie music low. Asked me if I was in town for the wedding. My throat closed. Not anymore, I managed. I checked in without saying much. The woman behind the desk smiled too wide and offered a warm cookie. I took it out of habit and carried it like a token I didn't know how to use. In the room, I didn't unpack right away. I sat on the edge of the bed, with the quilt still in its case, my coat folded beside me, and wondered how something could feel so final without a single slammed door. What hurt wasn't just the disinvite. It was the timing. He waited until I landed. He knew I was coming. He saw my messages. My flight confirmation even joked about the TSA taking my homemade banana bread. And still, he said nothing until I was already here, already committed, already fully invested. It was like someone watching you jump off the diving board and only shouting no water when you're mid-air. I opened the suitcase. The quilt was right on top. I unfolded it slowly, smoothing the fabric like I was trying to iron out a history. There was my grandmother's square, a pale yellow sunflower stitched with 1941. My mother's square stitched in soft blue. Mine a patch of flannel from Evan's baby blanket. I ran my fingers over each thread, then stopped at the empty square. I'd sewn it years ago, left blank. I used to picture writing his wife's name in it, maybe over a dinner where she called me Mama Morgan with a smile. That spot would stay blank now. I tried calling him. Once. Straight to voicemail. No apology text. No sorry mum. She wanted it small. Just that one message. Cold. Dismissive. Final. Like a RSVP revoked mid-flight. And here's the thing, I didn't expect a spotlight. I didn't want to walk him down the aisle or give a toast. I just wanted to be in the room. To witness. to watch my boy begin something new and know I had a small part in getting him there. I called Harper next, his daughter my granddaughter. She didn't pick up either, which made sense. Probably busy with rehearsal hair appointments, whatever 17-year-olds do before a wedding. I left her a message, "Sweetheart, I'm in town. Would love to see you. No pressure. Just let me know." I didn't mention the text. Didn't mention the exclusion. I still wasn't ready to say it out loud. As if naming it made it real. The sun had started to set outside, casting a burnt orange glow across the beige carpet. I stood by the window cookie untouched on the table, the quilt folded neatly across the bed. I imagined Evan laughing at the rehearsal dinner, maybe giving a speech about new beginnings. I wondered if anyone would notice I wasn't there, if they'd even ask. I thought about sending a message back, something short, something that matched his tone. Got it. Thanks for the heads up. But I didn't. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of my pain delivered politely. Instead, I sat back down, picked up the hotel notepad, and wrote just 3 words. Call attorney Monday. Because if I wasn't welcome at his new beginning, he wasn't going to be the future I invested in either. And just like that, something in me shifted. Quietly, without drama. Like a switch flipped in a room no one else had bothered to enter. I folded the note, placed it under my glasses case, and exhaled for the first time in hours. I wasn't going to chase a seat at a table where the menu never included me. If they had no room for my stories, they wouldn't get a chapter in mine. That night, I slept in the dress I'd packed for the wedding, not out of sadness, out of defiance, because I still believed in showing up, even if it was only for myself. I didn't sleep. Not really. The bed was too stiff, and the room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and something older, old carpet maybe, or the kind of air that's been trapped too long behind sealed windows. I lay on my side for hours, facing the alarm clock that glowed. 3:12 a.m., then 3:44, then 4:19, like it was trying to wear me down. I kept the lights off. Just the thin strip of street lamp light filtering through the curtains, casting long shadows across the walls. The quilt was folded at the foot of the bed, and I kept staring at it like it might get up and walk out on me too. At some point, I picked up my phone. No new messages. Not from Evan, not from Harper. Just a few emails, newsletters I forgot to unsubscribe from, and one reminder to refill my blood pressure meds. I scrolled through photos next. There he was. My boy, age 6, holding up a frog with both hands and grinning like he'd discovered gold. Then one of him, with braces, standing next to me on his middle school graduation day. I looked tired in that photo, hair frizzing from humidity arms wrapped tight around him. He was already starting to pull away, even then I can see it now. That slight lean to the side, the way he smiled more for the camera than for me. I opened the favorites folder. Tucked between a picture of Harper and a video of a squirrel falling off my bird feeder was a voicemail, one I'd saved for nearly a decade. "Hey Ma, just calling to say I landed safe. Flight was fine. That book you got me really good. Love you. I'll call when I get back." It was dated 2015, a random business trip, I think. But I'd kept it. I don't even know why. Maybe because it was the last time he said love you without needing something after. I played it twice, then pressed my phone to my chest and let the silence ring in my ears. That was the thing no one told you about motherhood. It's not the diapers, or the carpools, or the science fair volcanoes that break you. It's the slow erosion, the way the calls get shorter, the holidays get quieter, the thank yous get replaced with Venmo requests, until one day you're sitting in a hotel room you booked for his wedding, and he uninvites you after you land. I pulled out the folder, the one I'd kept in my suitcase without knowing why. The just-in-case file, copies of transfers, emails, old receipts, college books, down payment help. rent that one summer he was laid off, a laptop for Harper, birthday checks, grocery money that magically appeared when they were tight that month. It was never about the money. God knows if he had just said thank you, just looked me in the eye once and said, "I remember what you did for me," that would have been enough. But the silence, it was like feeding someone for years, only to find out they'd been calling you a burden behind your back. I flipped to the last entry, $3,000, sent 2 months ago, labeled wedding expenses. Anything they need. He cashed it the same day. I whispered it out loud. Anything they need. Except me. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small tin I'd packed tea bags, chamomile, a travel habit. I used the coffee maker to fill the paper cup with hot water. It tasted like plastic and regret, but I held it anyway. Warmth was still warmth. By the window, I watched the sky go from black to deep navy. A truck beeped, backing into the lot. A woman in scrubs walked briskly to her car phone to her ear. The world kept moving. And I just stood there, one hand on the curtain, trying to remember the last time I was invited to something, because I mattered not, because I made things easier. I'd taught for 28 years, library science and second grade before that. I was good at it. The kind of teacher who had mismatched cardigans and a drawer of stickers. I'd had kids come back 10 years later and say, "You made me love books." And still somehow my own son forgot the woman who taught him how to read. I turned around, saw the quilt still folded, the wedding dress still zipped in its garment bag, the hotel cookie untouched, and I knew. I wasn't going to the venue, not to peek in, not to stand across the street. I didn't need to see the chairs or the cake or the curated smiles. I wasn't the one missing out. I reached for the hotel notepad again, wrote 2 names this time. 1, call Jean my attorney. 2, Harper. I paused before the second, then added a third line. 3, begin again. That was the thing. I thought this trip was about witnessing my son's big moment, but now I realized it might actually be about witnessing my own. And for the first time in a long while, I didn't feel invisible. I felt inevitable. The law office was tucked between a dry cleaner and a tax prep chain in a faded peach building that had seen better paint jobs. No marble floors, no sleek furniture. Just a bell that jingled when I opened the door, and a potted plant that looked like it needed a second chance. I liked it instantly. I had called that morning and asked if they took walk-ins. A young man with a voice like morning news said they could fit me in before lunch. No frills, just paperwork, he added. Sounds perfect, I told him. Inside, a woman in her late 50s, with silver curls and dark eyes, looked up from her desk. Ms. Morgan? Yes, I'm Valerie. Come on in. She led me to a small office with mismatched chairs and a chipped ceramic mug that read, "World's okayest lawyer." She saw me glance at it and smiled, a joke from my daughter. She meant it lovingly. I sat down and laid the folder in my lap. I didn't open it. Not yet. I need to update my will, I said. Valerie nodded, once didn't ask why. All right, who are we removing? My son, I said, steady as stone. Evan Morgan. Full removal. No secondary access. No indirect shares. No trust clauses with his name hidden in the fine print. Understood. She flipped to a blank form. And who is replacing him? My granddaughter, Harper Morgan, full beneficiary of the estate. But I want restrictions. She looked up. Go on? She doesn't get full access until she's 25. Unless it's for school, a first home, or medical care. No cars, no handbags, no disappearing to Europe with a boy she met in chem lab. Valerie smiled lightly. Sounds like a young woman worth investing in. She's kind, I said. She listens, and she's the only person in that family who's ever asked how I'm really doing. I pulled the folder out, then slid it across the table. These are records. 20 years' worth of financial support. Quiet, unacknowledged, always sent with love. Rent checks, hospital bills, wedding deposits, $3,000 sent just 2 months ago. He didn't even thank me. Just sent me a 5-word text that ended everything I thought we still had. Valerie didn't look through the papers. She just placed one hand gently on top of the folder. You don't have to prove anything, Elaine. Not to me. Not to anyone. I nodded. I know. But I needed to bring it, so I could see it one last time and let it go. We spent the next hour reviewing language irrevocable trust executor appointments, emergency contact updates. I added that Harper could only receive a disbursement if she called to tell me about her classes at least once a month. That part's not legally enforceable, Valerie said, amused. Doesn't matter, I said. It's for me. At the end, she handed me the pen. It felt heavier than it looked, sleek black, with her firm's name embossed in tiny silver letters. I signed once, then, twice then again, on a witness sheet. With each stroke of the pen, I felt something inside me steady, not angry, not vengeful, just done. I'll send the finalized copy to your email once it's notarized, she said. Would you like us to notify your son formally? I shook my head. No. Let him find out the same way he found me inconvenient, quietly. Valerie didn't argue. She slid the folder into her filing cabinet and stood with me. You'd be surprised how many people walk in here uncertain, needing to be convinced they deserve change. But not you. You came ready. I've been practicing in my head for years, I said. I just didn't know until yesterday that I was finally done rehearsing. She held the door open for me. And as I stepped out into the sun, something lifted. It wasn't triumph, it was release. Like setting a box down you've been carrying so long you forgot how to stand up straight. I walked back to the hotel slower than before, but steadier. Past a bakery I didn't notice the day before. Smelled cinnamon and warm sugar. For a moment, I imagined Harper and me sharing something sweet there, laughing like we used to before the family got too complicated. Back in my room, I laid the quilt out on the bed again, not because I needed to cry over it, but because it deserved to be seen. I looked at the empty square one more time. I didn't feel bitter, just clear. That space would stay blank, not because no one wanted it, but because I no longer needed someone to fill it in to feel whole. Later that night, Harper finally texted back. Hi, Grandma. Just heard you're in town. Can we meet for coffee? Please. And right then, I knew. I may have lost a seat at one table, but someone still saw me. Someone still reached back. And I wasn't done building something beautiful. The morning of the wedding dawned with postcard skies. Pale blue a breeze just enough to rustle leaves and not a single cloud in sight. I sat in the hotel chair watching the palms sway outside my window, wondering how a day could look so perfect and still carry so much abandonment. I didn't get dressed for the wedding, not in the lace-collared navy dress I'd brought. Instead, I wore a soft grey blouse and black slacks, the kind of outfit you wear to sit quietly in a public place. Respectable. Presentable. Invisible. I combed my hair into a low twist, fastened my earrings, slipped on my watch. The small things we do to remind ourselves we still exist, even when no one invites us to. I folded the quilt into its cloth bag and tied the drawstring gently. Not because I thought I'd change my mind, but because it still deserved dignity. Love doesn't evaporate just because it goes unacknowledged. Sometimes it just gets folded up. The wedding venue was only a 15-minute cab ride away, a gated estate on the hills outside the city. The kind of place that gets rented for magazine photo shoots and influencer brunches. Wide stone steps, wrought iron gates, bougainvillea climbing the walls like they had something to prove. I didn't go inside. Of course not. But across the street, tucked under a jacaranda tree, shedding violet petals like rain, there was a public bench. I sat there, quiet, calm, not hiding, just witnessing. A woman in a champagne-coloured dress pulled up in a white Lexus, adjusting her fascinator in the rearview mirror. A toddler in suspenders chased bubbles, while his mother reapplied lip gloss. Laughter, soft music warming up in the distance, cell phones lifted for selfies. It all moved around me like a scene I'd stepped away from, but not entirely left. Then I saw him. Evan. He stepped out of a black town car, polished down to the cufflinks. Same walk, same jawline, but older, now sharpened by years and ambition. His hair was parted neatly combed the way I used to do when he was small and squirming in Sunday clothes. A woman in blush pink stepped up beside him, his bride. She reached for his hand, leaned in, whispered something, and he laughed. He didn't look back, not once. And that was what stung. Not anger, not betrayal, but the clean, clear confirmation that he wasn't even haunted by what he'd done. It wasn't just that I wasn't invited, it was that I had become a non-character in his life. No mention. No seat left empty. No acknowledgement that his mother, had ever existed. The guests rose. Music swelled strings and soft piano. A procession began. He took his place near the arch, back straight jaw, relaxed. Like this moment belonged entirely to him, and no thread of it reached back to the woman who stitched his name into a quilt 35 years ago. I placed my hand on the bag in my lap. The quilt was still warm from the sun. I thought about untying the drawstring just to hold it one last time, but I didn't. Not here. It had already done its part. The ceremony lasted maybe 20 minutes. I know, because I counted every one. A neighbour's dog barked. A breeze knocked a plastic cup off a table. A bee buzzed past. Life kept moving, and I sat still in it. When the applause came, it was polite, sweet, expected. Cameras flashed. Guests clustered for photos. The couple posed under the arch. And somewhere, maybe 200 feet away, their photographer captured the moment as if the past had never existed. I stood then, brushing a few petals from my lap. I didn't feel bitter. I didn't feel erased. I felt free. Because I saw it now. The blank square in the quilt, it was never meant for her. It wasn't an omission. It was a message, a space left open not because it had been forgotten, but because not everything unfinished is a mistake. Sometimes it's a decision. I walked back down the hill, the bag with the quilt in one hand, my purse over my shoulder. No one called after me. No one noticed. But somewhere behind me, Harper was sitting at a reception table, maybe wondering where I was. And that was enough. Back at the hotel, I made myself a cup of real tea this time, brought from home chamomile and lemon balm. I sat by the window again this time with the light falling across my lap like a soft blanket, and exhaled for what felt like the first time all week. I didn't need a wedding to feel whole. I didn't need a title in someone else's speech. I had shown up. For myself. And I had witnessed the truth without begging for entry, that I realized was the real ceremony. Harper arrived at the cafe 5 minutes early. She always did, even as a little girl, too excited, too earnest, to ever be fashionably late. I spotted her through the glass before she stepped inside denim jacket sneakers, hair pulled into a loose braid like she used to wear when I brushed it for school picture day. She looked like herself, and yet older somehow. She scanned the room, eyes landing on me with that same soft recognition that once made me feel like the world was still mine. She crossed the floor quickly, wrapped her arms around me without hesitation. No awkwardness, no guilt, just warmth. "I'm so glad you're still here," she said, her voice tight. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. We sat by the window. She ordered herbal tea. I got black coffee strong. For a few minutes, we talked about small things, her new dorm, the professor who made them write poetry, how she still couldn't figure out the washing machines in her building. I let her talk. I didn't push. I never had to with her. Then with a pause, so subtle it was nearly missed, she reached into her bag and pulled out a napkin. Inside it, folded carefully, like something sacred, was a square of wedding cake. White frosting, pink trim, a tiny sugar flower slightly smudged. "I saved you a piece," she said softly. "It felt wrong that you weren't there. No one said anything, not even during the speeches." I stared at the cake. Such a small gesture, but it unraveled something in me I didn't know I was still holding tight. She looked down. I thought maybe they just forgot to mention you. But when I asked Dad later where you were, he looked at me like I was asking about a neighbor who moved years ago. He just said she didn't feel up to it. That's what he told everyone, that you were tired, or didn't like crowds, or whatever made it easier for them to sleep at night. I let that settle in. I took a sip of my coffee and held her gaze. "I flew across the country," I said. "I brought the wedding quilt, packed it with ribbon and tissue paper. I booked my hotel, and I sat at the edge of his new life like I was a relic, too soft, too ordinary, too much of where he came from, and not enough of where he was going." Harper didn't flinch. She didn't tell me I was wrong. She didn't make excuses for him. She just listened. And that was everything. "What happened to him?" she finally asked, voice barely above a whisper. "He used to be kind. When Grandpa died, he held your hand the whole time." I remember that. I nodded. "He changed. Gradually. The kind of change you don't notice until one day you realize the calls only come when something's needed and the thank yous stop coming altogether." Harper looked out the window, jaw tight. I thought I'd always be proud of him. But lately, I don't know. I feel like he's playing a part. At the wedding, he didn't seem joyful, just polished, like a mannequin in a tux. I smiled sadly. Image matters more than connection in some circles, and I didn't fit the image. I wear old cardigans. I send banana bread in foil. I bring handmade quilts to California weddings. She leaned forward, urgent. "But that's exactly why I love you." Her voice cracked then, and so did mine. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small envelope I had once meant for her father and his bride. Inside was the pendant gold, delicate, engraved with 2 letters. HM and RM. Harper Morgan and Ruth Morgan, my mother. I had added Harper's initials last month on instinct. "I brought this for them," I said. "But I think I was always bringing it for you." She opened it slowly. Inside was a photo of her at age 6, missing 2 teeth, and me beside her reading a book at the park. We looked like we belonged. She blinked fast, then closed the locket and held it close. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'll wear it, always." I laid my hand over hers. "You're not responsible for what he did. But I want you to know the truth, so you never think my absence meant I didn't care." She nodded. "You're the only one who's ever told me the truth, without making me feel guilty for asking." A breeze rattled the patio chairs outside. The barista turned up the music, slightly soft jazz in the background. Life moved around us, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was sitting in a moment that mattered. Harper sipped her tea, then reached over and held my hand again. "Grandma, can I ask you something kind of scary?" I smiled. "Go ahead. Can we stay close? Like really close? Not just holiday calls or awkward brunches, but actually close." I exhaled slowly, the kind of breath you take when the weight finally shifts. "We already are." She stayed until the sun got too warm on our shoulders. When she stood to leave, she hugged me again, this time tighter. And as she walked away, locket glinting in the afternoon light, I knew something profound had just shifted. I hadn't just gained a granddaughter. I'd been seen, and in that moment, maybe even more importantly, I'd let myself be. Coming home felt different this time. The taxi dropped me off just after sunset. My porch light flickered on as I stepped out, suitcase in one hand, tote bag slung over my shoulder. The familiar creak of the front steps didn't sting like it used to. It sounded like an old friend greeting me. Inside, the air held the scent of old wood and lavender sachets. My houseplants had survived. The thermostat blinked in quiet welcome. Everything was just as I had left it. Except me. I left my bags by the door and went straight to the back room, the one I'd always called the everything room. It had been a guest room once, then a sewing room, then the place where I kept boxes I didn't want to deal with, but couldn't throw away. You know the kind. Labeled things like Evan College or Dad's Tools, or just... Tonight, I pulled every box out and laid them open like autopsies. In one marked Evan, 2nd grade, I found a drawing of a treehouse with stick figures labelled me and Mom with arrows pointing to smiley faces. In another, a handmade birthday card with glitter that still clung to the fold, to the best mommy in the universe. Love, Evan. I traced the letters with my finger. Then I opened the shoebox. Inside, notes, letters, ticket stubs, and one yellowing paper that read, "Thank you for making lunch every day. You're the best cook. I love your hugs." Signed in crayon E. I sat down on the carpet with that note in my lap. The silence wrapped around me gentle now. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I just let it be what it was, a memory, a true one. From before things changed. That night I started letting go. I kept that one note, the one with the hugs. I framed it and placed it in the hallway between the kitchen and living room. The rest, I burned them in the old stone fireplace. Slowly, deliberately. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Not everything old needs to be saved. Sometimes love lives in letting go. Next came the folders. All the bank records, the wire transfers, the printed emails. I fed them through the shredder in batches, watching years of quiet sacrifice reduce to paper snowflakes. Each one was a story I didn't need to justify anymore. At midnight, I brewed tea. Real tea. I sat in my reading chair and opened a fresh journal. The first page read, "Things I've done for others, I will now do for myself." And then I made a list. Mended Harper's locket chain. Donated the wedding quilt to a women's shelter. Cleared the guest room to start painting again. Booked a weekend retreat for October. I had spent decades cushioning everyone else's fall. Maybe now it was time to build something soft for me. The next morning I opened the windows, let the breeze in, turned on music from my college days. Joni Mitchell, Nina Simone, the voices that once made me feel like I mattered before anyone needed me to. I went into the attic and took down my old easel, wiped it clean, found my paint box buried under a pile of unused seasonal decor. My hands remembered the motions, even if they trembled a little at first. I stood there in the sunlit corner of my dining room, brushing colours onto canvas, without permission, without purpose. Just because it was time. That week, I donated 5 bags of clothes. Old coats, outgrown holiday sweaters, that scarf Evan gave me 5 Christmases ago, the one I wore every year out of duty, not warmth. Gone. I cooked a real dinner chicken pot pie from scratch and set the table for one. Candles, napkin ring, cloth placemat. Because I deserved that kind of care too. Then I called Harper. We talked for over an hour. About classes music, what it felt like to be seen, and what it meant to outgrow a parent without guilt. She said she might take a road trip this fall and asked if I'd like to join. I said yes before she finished the sentence. That night, I stood by the mirror brushing my hair, and for the first time in years, I didn't wonder if I was still wanted. I knew I was needed in a different way now. Not for money, not for logistics, but for presence, for truth. I whispered to my reflection, "We made it, because we did, not through fire and vengeance, but through quiet courage and the audacity to start again." 3 months later, I found myself sitting in a college auditorium, hands folded in my lap, wearing a soft blue sweater Harper had gifted me on my birthday. On stage, rows of students adjusted microphones and nervously cleared their throats. Parents leaned forward with proud smiles. Phones were held high. But I just sat still, watching the lights shift across the floor, waiting for her. Harper was performing a spoken word piece as part of her first-year creative showcase. Stories of home, they called it. Students were invited to share something personal, anything tied to the idea of where they came from, what shaped them. I hadn't expected to be invited, but Harper had texted me 2 weeks ago with a picture of the flyer and the words, "You need to be here for this." And so I was. Evan sat 2 rows ahead of me. Yes, he came. I saw his name on the RSVP list in the lobby. No new wife beside him, just himself. His hair was shorter now, grey streaks at the temples. He looked older than 35, or maybe just heavier in a way you can't measure by pounds. He hadn't seen me, or maybe he had, and chose not to react. Either way, I didn't look away. When Harper walked onto the stage, the room hushed. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, but carried herself like she had something to say that mattered. And she did. She stood at the mic, cleared her throat, once, then began. "Some people think home is where you're born. Others say it's where your name is on the lease. But for me, home was a woman with soft hands and a voice that made you feel safe without saying much. Home was quilted, homemade, quiet. My father taught me ambition, but she taught me presence. My father gave me resources, but she gave me reasons. One summer, I watched her get erased, not loudly, just excluded, like a name left off the credits of a film she funded. But instead of fighting, she rewrote the ending, not to make others look small, but to remind herself she was never meant to beg for space in a story she helped build. This piece is for her. For the woman who taught me that silence when chosen is not weakness, it's power. The room fell silent. You could hear the air conditioning kick on. A phone buzzed somewhere in someone's bag. And still, no one moved. Harper stepped back from the mic eyes, scanning the room. She didn't look for applause. She looked for me. And when she found me, she smiled so softly, it felt like a secret only we shared. People clapped. Loud, emotional, the kind of applause that doesn't just come from good writing, it comes from truth. Evan stood slowly as if unsure whether to clap. He didn't turn around. He didn't have to. Because that was it. That was the moment. No raised voices, no courtroom drama. Just the story being told accurately at last, and the audience finally hearing it. I didn't say a word as we left the building later. Harper looped her arm through mine, the locket resting over her heart. Outside, the sky was turning gold with dusk. A breeze carried the scent of wet grass and autumn wood smoke. We stopped by a garden bed full of tulips, most already wilted, except one still defiantly in bloom. Harper pointed to it and said, "That one's stubborn." I smiled. "That one's mine." And we walked on. No fanfare, no confrontation, just quiet truth standing where noise once ruled. The last word wasn't shouted. It didn't need to be. The last word was hers. And she never even had to raise her voice. Sometimes the most powerful way to reclaim your dignity is not through confrontation, but through clarity. This story reminds us that silence isn't always weakness. It can be a boundary. a declaration that we no longer owe explanations to those who chose to forget our worth. For anyone who's ever been excluded, dismissed, or made to feel like their love was invisible, Elaine's journey is a quiet but firm affirmation your presence matters even when others don't acknowledge it. True justice doesn't always come with grand speeches or public apologies. Sometimes it's found in the quiet act of choosing yourself, setting down what no longer serves you, and nurturing the relationships that do. Especially in family dynamics, where obligation and loyalty often blur into emotional debt. This story challenges us to ask who shows up when you're no longer useful, who still sees you when you have nothing to give but yourself. It's not about revenge. It's about release, about letting go of the need to be chosen and instead choosing your own peace. If this story moved you or reminded you of someone in your life, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever walked away from a relationship that no longer saw your value or found healing in unexpected places? Share your experience in the comments. We read everyone. If this story resonated, please hit like to show your support and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next heartfelt, thought-provoking drama we bring to life. And above all, thank you for being here. Wishing you peace, clarity, and the courage to choose yourself every time.